Hello my friends, it's Ebird Online, and yes, yesterday one of the most despicable and diabolical characters 90 Day Fiancé has ever known has finally been put in jail. County Jail Geoffrey Paschel has been found guilty on all charges. And for any of you who don't know who Geoffrey Paschel is, lucky you. I wish I could go back to a time when I had no idea who Geoffrey Paschel was either. Geoffrey appeared on season 4 of 90 Day Fiancé, and despite his long record of criminal wrongdoing, which included drug dealing and theft, and a long list of accusations of domestic violence and convictions for domestic violence, he was welcomed with open arms by TLC onto season 4 with Russian love interest Varia and sycophantic side piece Mary. So unrepentant sociopath Geoffrey told us that all his criminal wrongdoings were in the past and that he turned over a new leaf. What he didn't say was that the new leaf was worse than the old one. Geoffrey really was a manipulative and awful character. He managed to make Big Ed seem like George Clooney. So in this video we're going to discuss and go over all of the charges and exactly what he was accused of in this, his most recent brush with the law. So this case came from a domestic dispute incident following his ex-fiancée Kristen Wilson in June 2019. And guys, I did do a previous video on this, and if you haven't seen it, I'll link it here so you can have a look at everything that Geoffrey has done, but this video is just going to centre on this case alone. So Kristen, who took the stand to share her ordeal, told us that Geoffrey launched an attack on her one night after they returned home from having a few drinks at a bar. Kristen said that Geoffrey had grabbed her by her neck and slammed her head against the wall several times, and slammed her head into the hardwood floors of her home. He dragged her through the house by her hair and continued throwing her body into walls and furniture. She tried in vain to get away but was prevented by Geoffrey, and after this he confiscated her iPhone, took out the SIM card and completely disabled it so she was unable to call authorities. Kristen didn't know what to do, so she got into bed with him and laid there and pretended that she was no longer angry. And she waited until she thought Geoffrey had gone to sleep, and then she got up in the middle of the night, only partially clothed, and ran 200 metres to her neighbour's house and knocked on the door, and they then called the police. Officers noted that she had abrasions and bruises on her forehead, elbows and knees, and these seemed to corroborate her accusations. Geoffrey obviously denied all of this and said that she was only saying it so she could mess up a custody battle with his ex-wife. And he said none of this is true, only God can judge me, Geoffrey, God and the Knox County Court. And they have adjudged you to be guilty. And he was found guilty on the following charges. So he was guilty of aggravated kidnap, and this of course is when he kept her in the apartment against her will. He was also found guilty of domestic violence and interference with an emergency call. And in court yesterday, the judge let us know that this was a unanimous verdict from the jury. And he too said that he concurred with the verdict. And Geoffrey will be sentenced on Friday, the 3rd of December, and has now been remanded in custody, ensuring that he'll be in prison at least for Thanksgiving. The main problem I have with this whole case is the fact that even in the face of the abundance of evidence, Geoffrey still tried to pull the wool over everybody's eyes and say she made the whole thing up. Not just police officers, but also when the paramedics turned up, they also said that she had mild signs of concussion. And guys, at one point she said she had actually blacked out, and that they too thought that her injuries were not, as he said, caused by herself, but as the result of an attack. So when the verdicts were read out and they came back guilty, 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 Geoffrey looked down and looked unsurprised, and you could hear behind him a group of women laughing as they left the courtroom. Perhaps they'd seen his Instagram page. They've been looking at his stories, the stories he tells of peace and tranquility. Not for your victims, Geoffrey, not for your victims. And Geoffrey's astonishing levels of arrogance led him to decide to take the stand himself in order to protest his innocence. And I've pretty much always thought that Geoffrey was a garbage person, but I didn't also think he was a moron. None of the things he said made any sense. He said that Kristen made the whole thing up to try and ruin his custody battle with his now ex-wife, but he couldn't explain why he was so angry on the evening that he was arrested. And in the police report, they said that additional restraints had to be applied to Geoffrey multiple times after he attempted to kick the windows out of a police vehicle. If you weren't angry, Geoffrey, why suddenly when the police decided to arrest you, did you see this red mist? When Geoffrey can't explain why something happened, he simply denies it and says it wasn't true. And he said people, when they're in a custody fight, they say this, they say that, the next person says this, the next one says this. The next person says this, but I didn't do that. I didn't want to fight back with these women. I merely answered all the allegations. No, I didn't. That's ludicrous. I would never do that. But I didn't counter with an allegation of my own. That's not the way I even want to go about it. No, Geoffrey, it's not because you didn't want to go about it that way. It's because it wasn't true. Are you actually trying to say now that you want some sort of brownie points for not making up bullshit about these women? It's bad enough that you're denying their accusations anyway, considering that they're true. But wanting a pat on the back for not committing perjury is a new low even for you, Geoffrey. Even for you. If somebody has cuts and abrasions and bruises all over their body, you need to explain how it happened. If your only explanation is they did it to themselves, most right-thinking people will draw the conclusion that's highly unlikely. How likely is it that you're going to bang your own head against a wall, strip off and say you're only partially clothed, and then run to your neighbour's house at 3 a.m. and demand that the police are called? Geoffrey simply makes up a story and sticks to it, however ridiculous it is. There seems to be very little requirement for any of Geoffrey's narrative to make any bloody sense. And in court his lawyer actually said that all of the injuries that this woman had were self-inflicted. What? Self-inflicted? Bruises all over your body and mild concussion? I can't actually believe that he would think anyone would believe him. And Geoffrey, however would you get multiple injuries from simply running into a door frame? As was his testimony. Also, why was she running into a door frame? She was obviously, if that was even true, running away from you. Why? Because you're a violent and narcissistic, wife-beating bully. That's why. And to further back up the claims of Kristen, there were blood splatters all over the walls and floors. No doubt she did this herself as well, Geoffrey. And the neighbour from next door testified as well, and she said when the victim came to her door, she had a massive bruise on her head and she was scared out of her wits. And then Geoffrey also sought to try and stop people like myself and other 90 Day Fiancé vloggers by attacking them in the comments section and also making threats against them, as he did with myself. Geoffrey, if you want me to stop talking about you dragging women by their hair through the hallways of their houses, then you need to stop doing it. Also stop smashing iPhones into the 5 million constituent parts so that you can prevent people from calling the authorities to lock up your pathetic ass. If you want to stop women calling the authorities on you, just sign up to the Virgin network. They'd be very unlikely to get a signal. So Geoffrey's gone from being one of the most loathed people on TV to not being on TV at all, and I'm glad of it. Geoffrey tried to pull the wool over everybody's eyes and convince us that all his misdeeds and all his bad things were all in the past and we shouldn't be bringing it all up. And he did have some people championing the fact that you should be allowed to leave the past in the past. But when you're on TV in 2019 and 2020 and your charges relate to an incident in 2019, it's hardly the past, it's very recent. Also, you've got a 20-year history of women making allegations about you which are very, very serious. Finally, Geoffrey's been put where he belongs, behind bars. And the women of the World Wide Web are better off for it. He managed to trade on his baby blue eyes and his charm and good looks and his gorgeous accent. But Geoffrey, what you don't realise is that we know a wrong 'un when we see it. We saw how he kicked off in the restaurant with Varia and Varia's friends. And in this incident, there was a very real indication of his temper. He went from 0 to 100 in a few seconds. His anger bubbled over in super quick time. And we also saw what a narcissist he was when he tried to play Mary off against Varia, and he was smiling and loving all the bad feeling that was between these two women. He also, whilst he was on the stand, took the opportunity to tell lies about what happened with 90 Day Fiancé. He said the incident took place before he filmed and that all the filming was done in a 3-week period, and he said he was completely unaware of a petition asking to take him off 90 Day Fiancé. I know personally that he was aware because he made an Instagram post about it and he said, "I'm ignoring the haters." He also said he was invited to the tell-all, but he decided not to go, instead of the actual truth, which was 90 Day Fiancé had realised their mistake and he was asked not to come to the tell-all. Varia was allowed to go, but she said she'd chosen not to go because Geoffrey wasn't invited. Again, Geoffrey's lies just don't stack up. He had certain sections of the internet convinced of his innocence, but when there's actual testimony from a woman, physical evidence from that woman, corroborating statements from the police, the neighbours and paramedics, I think you'd have to be foolish to believe the one person who seeks to deny all of this. So guys, let me know what you think. Do you think justice was done in this case? I certainly think it was. And I really hope he gets a good long stint in jail so he can sit and think about his crimes. So guys, let me know what you think to this whole case. And also, do you think that TLC should tighten up their procedures? Somebody like Geoffrey should never have been on the show. Imagine if he'd gone to beat up Varia whilst production weren't there or whilst the cameras weren't there. I'm not suggesting it would have been their fault, but I do think they have some sort of a duty of care to ensure that people that are on the show have not been accused of very serious crimes. So guys, let me know what you think in comments down below, and I'll see you very soon. Please don't forget to subscribe to my channel, and also you can follow me on Twitter at Ebird Online. I'm very happy today that justice has been done, and that Geoffrey's scurrilous lies and denials have been shown up for what they are, absolute fabrications. You've been listening to Ebird Online, and I bid you good day.